Gonna test that out. All right, sorry about that, folks. Always an issue with this, with plugging equipment back in and out. So again, if you weren't here for the start of the episode, welcome into the NASCAR Pinty Series Power Hour. We broke the news last week. There was the Montreal Journal reporting that Alex Guenette has taken over the number 3 car for Team 3 Red EHR for the 2023 and 2024 season. Now, this is huge news. Obviously, this 3 car has had a bit of a tough go since Jason Hathaway retired after the 2020 season. Brett Taylor has been in this 3 car. They had a couple of good runs in 2021, but it was a very, very difficult season last year. Unfortunately, a really tough go of it. They had Dominic Saint-Cyr drive the 3 car at GP3R, Ken Schrader at Oshwekin Speedway, and then most notably Jake Sheridan, who took this car to the front at Delaware. But it, of course, the announcement has been made for 2 seasons. For the full 2 seasons, it will be Alex Guenette. Sponsorship has not been announced yet. I would expect you're going to see Moto Limite back out on that race car. No real shock there. Obviously, Guenette is one of the up-and-coming stars. Winning GP3R last year was obviously a huge, huge thing for him. But also, he backed it up with a come-from-the-back-to-the-front run at Circuit Icar. Followed it up with his third-place finish. Alex is definitely hitting his stride. After running with Rick Ware Racing the year previous, he only was able to do a part-time effort last year, scheduled to do the road course races and potentially a couple of ovals. It ended up only being the road courses, and not all of them, unfortunately, wasn't able to make the first race at CTMP due to illness. So unable to do all the races last year, but we won't have to worry about that now. He will do the full schedule for the next 2 seasons. Team 3 Red, obviously this is a bit of a change. I would have liked to see Brett Taylor be back, but obviously that did not happen. Same with Jake Sheridan. I'm hoping that they can get a deal put together to get Jake in an EHR car for 2023. Jake's proven that he is a really good talent. Had definitely a great run while he was in the 3 car at Delaware Speedway. As we know, though, sponsorship is the hardest thing to get in Ontario, and it is going to be even tougher once again this year. We definitely know that there's going to be a lot riding on these next 2 years for EHR. It has been a tough go of it since Hathaway stepped away. And the cars are plenty fast. We've seen Lessard run up front. We've seen Taylor run up front. The cars are good. It's just the results haven't been there. Dexter Stacey had a great season. Wallace Stacey had his first career season going. Obviously, this is going to be an interesting development for the off season as to what's going to happen with those 4 cars. Do they have 4 cars next year? Do they have 5 cars? Do they go back down to 3? I mean, there's a lot of things that we're going to have to look towards in the future here. Obviously, the one thing that you're going to be looking at is the performance of Alex Guenette, how he ran last year. And this looks like it would be a solid move for him. I think he's definitely on his way. I think Guenette has shown that he's got a lot of good skill. As Jim Haynes says, hit the like button. Thumbs up for everybody. It helps, and it does help bring more people to the channel to talk about the NASCAR Penny Series each and every week. It does help us immensely. Jim Haynes, thank you so much for coming back and joining in the conversation. Obviously, I want to hear from you guys on to what you think about this move for Alex Guenette moving into the legendary number 3 for Ed Hackinson. Myself, I am a little bit bummed that it's not Jake Sheridan in the 3 car, but I'm hoping that maybe that means that we'll see him in another car of some sort. One thing that was very noticeable at Delaware Speedway was the talent from he and Ray Morneau Jr. I think that there is a lot of great talent within Ontario. It's just about getting those partnerships able to come in and help them out. Of course, if you are new to the channel here on GeForce TV, subscribe. You get awesome content all season long. And of course, right into the off season. Myself, the Pinty's Power Hour on Mondays, and you've got the Race Rivals Race Chat show with, of course, the two best of the best, Clinton Jeffrey and Adam Ross on Wednesdays. Also, you will get your good dose of great Ontario racing. The APC series, of course, announced a couple of weeks ago that we're going to have the Oscar Hot Rods and as well the Oscar Modifieds, part of the new United Racing series, along with the Superstock. So I'd imagine we're going to see a lot more combination events, a lot more opportunities to catch them right here live on GeForce TV. Gary Collin, nice to see you. We're just talking about Alex Gannett moving over to the 3-car. Obviously, I am a little bit bummed, but I will say that Alex is one of my favorite people in the garage. A really, really nice individual, really, really talented young man. He is not going to be alone in terms of new people on the grid. I have a feeling like we're going to see some new names. It's just rumblings, sure, but you never know, really, with this off season in Canada. Of course, it is the off season, but the news is still coming fast and fierce. As you can tell, of course, my allergies are right back in time for this show. Jim Haynes says, anytime a team has stability, as in one driver and overall finishes should be consistent and better. I agree with you. I think Brett Taylor was a great opportunity. For whatever reason, it just didn't seem to click from that first initial year together. They did have some good runs. I think Brett lost a lot of confidence, unfortunately, and as you guys know, in this business, confidence is such an important part of being a successful race car driver. And unfortunately, having such a long distance to travel coming from out west to the east to be able to race was probably really tough financially. That separation from work and family, I can't imagine would have been easy. So I don't think Brett's done. Whether he's back in the Pinty series this year, I have not had any knowledge to that. I personally think he's definitely going to probably look at RS1. I think RS1, where Jason White, the Noel Dowler, those names have been out there. They've run in that series. We've seen Jared Fitzpatrick run out there, Gary Clue, JP Bergeron. It's definitely budding, that RS1 series, as a Western alternative for drivers rather than having to travel all the way out east. Obviously, there's some short track racing out in Western Canada that Brett could very well be a part of, as well as road course racing, Area 27, Sutherland, Wyant Group, just to name a few. I'd like to see Edmonton International become part of the RS1 as well. That's a way to expand the series and really make it a good Western alternative for series competitors. I know they definitely need some great partners, and they're working really hard. Speaking with some people from the series yesterday, and they really are doing a good job starting off that series. And I think with a track like Area 27 as a potential landing spot for a Pinty Series event, if they wanted to go that route, if it's me, I'd rather go see Penticton Speedway. I'd like to see these guys and gals head out to Western Canada to go run another oval race. I can understand wanting to go to Area 27 with the lineage of Jacques Villeneuve being the designer, but at the end of the day, I think a Western trip is probably far out of the cards right now if there's not a price tag and there's not money attached to it. Right now, we know Atlantic Canada has a pretty good price tag, at least in Newfoundland. Obviously, we've been talking about Riverside. Still rumblings. I don't know whether or not they're going to be closer. We're heading into mid-November here, and I know Tony Spiteri had mentioned with his conversation with Caitlin Patrick that there is hope to get that schedule completed and out before the end of November. Obviously, no pressure to them. I know they've got a lot that they have to consider, a lot that they have to work out because there's a lot of things that can impact that. We've got a lot of other companion series. Where are they going to run? We're going to need that. We're going to need that support week in and week out. There's a lot of schedules that have to be put together. OSS, APC, Superstock, midgets, hot rods, modifieds, all of these things have to be put in place. And we already know a couple of tracks that are guaranteed for next year. It's just the actual schedule of events for next year is going to be interesting. So we started off this episode talking about Alex Gannett taking over that legendary 3 car for 2 seasons. Full-time efforts, which is the stability, just as Jim mentioned here, stability for the EHR team that is probably going to be a little bit welcome. I mean, Jason, Brett was in there, but this past season, obviously, he wasn't able to be in the full season, and switching drivers week to week is obviously very, very tough. And I'm curious. We don't know about the Stacys yet, if they'll be back at EHR. That's another 2 of those cars. And then, of course, the big question mark for this whole team, Ray Jr. Courtemanche and Raphael Lessard. I think Raphael is obviously the big thing to look at. Raphael is one of the big stars of this series, but I think we can all admit that we looked a little bit more for results from Raphael, and it started off great at the beginning of the season, but unfortunately since then it was just wasn't a bad season by any means, but just a lot of really tough luck. And especially that last race at Delaware Speedway, he was running up front and had some contact after Brandon Watson led up in front of him. Kevin Lacroix got into him, and then there was that big melee that we saw on the back stretch or on the front stretch. But the NASCAR Pinty Series is continuing with its off-season content thanks to iRacing. There is the Invitational, the iRacing International Invitational presented by D-Box, available on enascar.ca or not enascar.com/live. You can watch it tomorrow night, and you can see our stars. That's right. We're going to have some of our stars out there. Trayton Lapsovich, JP Bergeron, and Kyle Steckley. Some of the younger stars, actually probably the youngest stars of our series out there. I think this pretty much might confirm that Kyle Steckley will run in the Pinty series at some point next year. I think it also confirms maybe JP Bergeron coming back and Trayton Lapsovich. I don't know why we would be putting them in this competition if they weren't going to be back. So 3 great young stars of the NASCAR Pinty Series. Of course, you'll catch them. They'll be competing up against drivers from the Mexico Series, Euro Series, and, of course, the NASCAR Next program. Names like Raja Caruth, Nick Sanchez, amongst many others. So definitely make sure you check them out. They'll be racing at Las Vegas Motor Speedway tomorrow on iRacing. Of course, that is NASCAR.com/live at 6 p.m. Eastern. Not the ideal time for us on the Eastern Coast, but Las Vegas Motor Speedway presented by D-Box, our 3 stars there. Trayton Lapsovich, who did go out and have a great run last year in this series. JP Bergeron and Kyle Steckley. We do expect to see Alex Tagliani and Jocelyn Facto at some point as well. It does say here in this tweet from the NASCAR Pinty Series that they are the drivers selected. So there could be a lot more. If you look actually on the roster list, Kyle Steckley and JP Bergeron weren't even on it. So this is actually nice to see that we're going to have a bit more than a couple of competitors. We only had 3 last year. So this is nice to see. Obviously, it would be cool to get a couple of other names out here to run the series, but not everybody has iRacing. So you're not going to see all these guys out there, guys and gals out there. But for sure, check them out. Thanks to D-Box, thanks to NASCAR for putting on the iRacing. It's the international. They called it a bunch of different names last year, but definitely go out and check out and see how our 3 reps from the NASCAR Pinty Series do? Well, this is also going to bring us back into some of those names that you just saw on that list and what's going to be coming up in the next couple of weeks. That is the Snowball Derby and the Snowflake 100 at Five Flags Speedway in Florida. Now, this is a yearly competition, brings the best late model drivers from around the province, around the country. I guess it's only us and another province. And then, of course, all over the United States. The Snowball Derby and the Snowflake is normally one of the best races that is put on year after year. I definitely want to say that I was able to catch last year. Fantastic event and lots of fun to watch. And we have a huge crowd of Canadian content going this year. Last year, it was only 2. We had Trayton Lapsevich and we had Brandon Watson. Now, Brandon Watson was competing in the Snowball Derby, whereas Trayton Lapsevich was in the Snowflake 100. This year, we're going to have a lot of Canadian content. Of course, we've got to mention Cole and Jarrett Butcher, once again out of Nova Scotia. They are competing once again this year. I believe Austin McDonald also competed last year. I don't believe he's on the list this year to compete in the Snowball Derby. However, we do have a good list of drivers for the Snowflake 100. As of right now, I only believe we have one in the Snowball Derby entry list, and that is Brandon Watson for White Motorsports, going to compete in that number 9 late model. He did okay last year. It was a bit of a struggle. I think they had a lot of problems with the car, and he and Trayton Lapsevich both did. But it's definitely going to be a tough competition for them once again this year, because the field is even bigger than it was last year. And in fact, the Snowflake 100 has a big group of NASCAR Penny Series drivers in it. We're going to go with Kyle Steckley. Steckley has been announced to drive in that number 22. That's a huge deal for him. Very excited. I know he was down there last year supporting. And Glenn Stiers. I don't know how Glenn's going to do, but I give him a lot of credit for going out there and trying. Trayton Lapsevich is not officially announced yet, but is expected that they are going to head out and compete once again. No, they were looking for funding. So if you do have or know somebody that is willing to fund or help support, even if you want to contribute yourself, go out, reach out to Trayton Lapsevich for that. Rafael Lessard is also going to be expected to race in the Snowflake 100. Whether it's the Snowflake or the Snowball, I'm not 100% sure. I was just told that Rafael is expected to be there. And then the big name, which is very interesting, he just got the number 3 car, and now he's going to go to the 30 car in the Snowflake for the same owners that Noah Gragson is going to drive for in the Snowball Derby. Thanks to Jeff Gottler for passing this on. Alex Gannett is going to go run the Snowflake 100 for Rhett Jones Racing. Possible opportunities, I would think, for him to do some ARCA or even some Xfinity races, it sounded like. Gannett has opportunities. A lot of funding meetings going on with him right now. Interesting that we're getting to that point right now already with Alex Gannett, that he has all these opportunities. Moto Elimite, obviously been his family business that's been on the car the longest. DLGL also featured on there, and I'm curious to see how he'll do. This is a great opportunity for all these Canadian racers. Obviously, Cole Butcher is probably Canada's best chance. If they can get the cars correct, I think obviously Brandon Watson will do really good in the Snowball Derby. And then, of course, all of those names that we talked about are potential to get in. I think Glenn Stiers might have a little bit harder of a time making the field. He's not got as much experience in late models as all of these other names. Obviously, Brandon Watson, Kyle Steckley, Trayton Lapsevich being regulars. Rafael Lessard, regular racer in late models. Alex Gannett, I'm not 100% sure how often he's been in the late models, but it's also another good field for him to compete against, especially heading into a full season in the NASCAR Penny Series. He will have a real tough go of it, I think, because he's switched. The one thing about Gannett is that he's not really had a solid footing the last couple of years. So he's now going to have a place where he's going to be able to stay home. He's going to have Jason Hathaway, Jamie Hackinson, Ed Hackinson. These are names that have been with this series for years. They know how to make successful race cars. They know how to put in the amount of work. That team is one of the hardest working, such great people involved in the EHR team. But again, they're hungry to win. They have had a really tough couple of years since Jason Hathaway left or retired in 2020, and they've gone through a lot of changes at that organization. And hopefully they'll see they've sold some of their cars off. So there's a good possibility that they'll be getting some new cars. Obviously, that number 8 car, their 8 car was sold, the oval and the road course. Maybe that means there's a new car coming. Maybe they downgrade. Maybe there's less EHR cars for 2023. Maybe there's more. Really don't know, and I'm very curious to see where that goes. A little surprised that Alex announced his plans ahead of the Team 3 Red release itself. Obviously, there's a lot that they'll have to figure out, but at the end of the day, this is big news. A contingent that we've got. Nice to see Marc-Antoine Camirand actually tuning in. The champ is watching, and definitely want to throw a shout out to Mark. We need to get Mark and GM Paillet to go down to the Snowball Derby. 2022 NASCAR Penny Series champion. Of course, big news for the Paillet team last year is that they announced that they'll be, or for this past week they announced, or 2 weeks ago I guess it was, Andrew Ranger will be back. Now we've got Alex Gannett confirmed to be back. I would assume, it's not been officially announced, but I would assume Marc-Antoine Camirand also will be back, confirmed for that. So you got your 2 Paillet cars plus the 3 car already announced. I think we can pretty well confirm LP Dumoulin back in the 47. That contract with WeatherTech was, I believe, a multi-year deal signed back in 2021. And DJ Kennington with Castrol, I believe that was also a multi-year deal signed back in 2020. But definitely for sure, there is a lot that we can be excited for next year. There's a lot of, announcements being made in November wasn't really a huge thing. I think we can hope to see even more. I'm working on a team chart right now that I will update on the regular to see who is going to go where when we get announcements and when. Obviously, there's some names that we can expect to see joining the NASCAR Penny Series in this offseason. Of course, names that we're going to see out on the dirt for next year. I think that this past year, very successful run out at Ohsweken Speedway. Not surprising at all that we're going to see probably more names. I think Dave Bailey was just the start. I think you're going to have a lot more other names interested. Aaron Turkey. If I'm NASCAR, there's a couple of names that I want to get, and they're the names that have been really pushing and getting their fan bases involved in social media stuff. And I'm only talking about the Paint Scheme Challenge because that's the only thing that's active at the moment on the social media side of the NASCAR Penny Series, aside from the D-Box International iRacing Challenge. Aaron Turkey's got a huge fan base. Absolutely humongous. I want to see more of what he can do. I liked the Nitro 54 car. I think it was a really nice looking paint scheme. Gave himself a really good run in that 99 car for Larry Jackson. I'd like to see Larry Jackson's team have full-time competitors in them, and Matthew Scannell running the road courses. I could still see that happening with ovals. Aaron Turkey, if he wanted to. I don't know if he does, but I want to see more. We're hoping to get him on the podcast and chat with him about that potential. I think obviously Dave Bailey got the hang of the car towards the end of the race, but I think he'll do amazing things when he gets when he gets another opportunity, and I'm pretty sure he will get another opportunity. Ken Schrader is not going to be the only name that we see from the United States that's going to come up and race. Stuart Friesen, I think we can expect that he'll probably come up if he is able to every time. And of course, if they leave this race around the same time that Watkins Glen is, it's going to help. Having this race on a Tuesday or a Monday, whatever it be, is going to help. I know it might be strange for some people because they've got to work, but at the end of the day, you got to do what you can to try and get big name stars. And it's not as simple as getting guys and gals on an off week, because there really isn't any off weeks for the Cup Series anymore. It's not like they used to have so many years ago. It's really a straight shot and not a lot of free time, unfortunately. So I think we'd expect to see definitely Delaware and Ohsweken as the big stops for a lot of people. Newfoundland, I think you'll see a lot more local flavor. From what I've heard, a lot of people really happy with how that went down. A lot of people that would like to continue to see it continue. Really, it is one of the things that we needed. Let's be honest. I mean, there's things that you got to do to be able to create an audience, get an audience, and retain. That's the biggest thing, retaining an audience. And I know that just by doing a show here on G-Force TV, it is not easy to get people to want to tune in and listen to you talk. It's not. It is not a simple thing. So what I'm hoping for is that we will have opportunities to continue to grow in the off season. What we've seen, Aaron Turkey's fan base, Ray Morneau's fan base, Matthew Shirley's fan base, Brandon McFarland, these guys and gals that aren't traditional racing in our series. So we've got a dirt racer, you've got a racer from out west, a racer from out east, drivers that maybe aren't well known outside of the pocket of racing. Well, the fan bases have been phenomenal. And I talked about this on a previous episode where Ray Morneau Jr.'s applause at Delaware for the Pinty series was probably the biggest of anybody there. That is huge. That online presence is huge. Now you see the fan bases constantly just voting and sharing and passing on social media posts is huge. What's really noticeable, and this is, I hear this a lot, and I want to make sure that people understand that just because I host this show, there's no favoritism on my side. Obviously, you want to be impartial. You want to be listening to either side of an argument. I have a lot of issue with people that complain that the series is just Quebec drivers. Well, there's a large contingent of Quebec drivers. That's absolutely true. But one thing that is very noticeable about what they do is the social media and the promotional side of things. And that's where Ontario really needs to catch up. I think a lot of us as fans know that there used to be a lot of love for CASCAR, and I think a lot of people do not know what happened to it. That's the absolute truth. I think a lot of people just thought CASCAR died and have no idea that the Pinty series even exists. The reality is the strength of racing in Ontario has to be from the bottom all the way up to the top, right? Now, if you can get some bigger supporters from the top to filter down to the bottom, that's great. The reality is that's not typically how it happens. You're not typically going to have sponsorships that start in the grassroots of racing and all of a sudden decide, oh, well, this is great. I'm all of a sudden going to quadruple my money and go and sponsor a Pinty's car. No. It's normally the one that has all the accolades. And it's not a huge amount of accolades, but getting TV time on TSN, that is, in a way, an accolade. The APC series, that's going to be one that's going to get a lot more attention as well because it is going to have a live broadcast. online, sure, but a streaming platform that anybody can access is a lot more attractive to a major company. Where we're hoping to get more of an audience is throughout the entire year so that you can retain the audience into the new year. As Jim says, with the borders open will make the biggest difference as long as there are enough cars for special one-offs. The only problem, though, Jim, is last year we didn't have enough cars, first off. But the other thing we have to consider is, could people then avoid, and this is the thing, we're saying that they'll be, because the borders are open, all the people will come in and want to see it. Well, I think it might do the opposite, in that a lot of the audiences drop because they want to go to the Cup races or Xfinity races or truck races or IndyCar or whatever they want to go and see. That's the hope, is that we can retain the audience this year. I think last year was a really good year for us because we were able to keep people here. This is what they had to watch. Well, the biggest thing is Ontario drivers, Ontario fans, sorry, not drivers, but Ontario fans, this is the reality, are not going to want to watch if they don't have any Ontario drivers that are going to run up front. That's the biggest thing. It's the same thing with Western Canada. It's the same thing with Eastern Canada. Sure, you'll have the real gung-ho fans that will support week in and week out. But having names like a local driver in a race does such a big thing, not just for the series, but for that track. Look at the names. Chantel Kalika, Matt Shirley. They had a really good turnout. Good runs for both of them at their races. That's what you need. Going out to Eastbound Park and having Sarah Thorne out there. Having Brandon McFarlane out there. Obviously, that was a little bit tougher. Their runs didn't run out. They didn't have as good of a run as the Western drivers did. Local racers out of Delaware, having Jake Sheridan and Ray Morneau there at those races was huge. Now, imagine not 1, 2, or 3, but 4, 5, 6 local racers. That's how you're going to bring in all those fans that are local. You get those names. I mean, we talk about those APC names. There are tons of guys and gals within Ontario that I would love to see in a NASCAR Pinty Series race. There are so many talented drivers. It is unbelievable the amount of talent that we have within the province and really across the country. I think you can go to the RS1 series and you'll find some really big names. Jason White out there, Noel Dowler out there, Mark and Sean McIntosh out there. And obviously the Seabirds, Trevor and Riley, really talented drivers as well. So you have a lot of people across Canada that could be all coming into the series. The problem is, of course, as we talk about, it is a funding thing. It's a funding thing. It is in racing as a whole. But if you have a really healthy top, you do what Quick Wick does, what Pinty's does. It filters down into the lower divisions. Now, whether it started lower and moved its way up, I can't say because I don't know the history back there. I just know that right now you've got Pinty sponsoring the top NASCAR series, but they're also sponsoring dirt racing, right? You've got Quick Wick, which sponsors literally everything under the sun. But the reality is that you can't keep that model forever. You have to have new names coming in. That's the reality, is that we do need those companies coming in that will help. It is a hard thing, but I think the Delaware race as the finale, I think that the Ohsweken race are your sellers. CTMP always will get good counts. GP3R will always get good counts because those are big events. CTMP is a world-known facility. GP3R is a huge province-wide, Canada-wide known race. Promoted the hell out of it. Toronto, I don't know if it's there yet. I think Toronto is still thought of as the IndyCar race, and it is for the most part. Now, what we did last year, great idea, having the Pinty Series race featured as the headliner on the Friday. needs to do that. We need to do that every year. Where we need that little bit of assistance is trying to get Sunset, iCar, those tracks that maybe people don't know as well. I don't know how many people know that Innisfil, Ontario has Sunset Speedway. Jim says it happens all in the US all the time. I will tell somebody where we will be, and people will say, didn't know there was a racetrack there, or didn't know it was still open. Right? No idea. Promotion is a huge thing. As we talked about before, trying to get these drivers, trying to get names on BT, breakfast television, on... that's the tough part, is where do you go? Streaming places is always a huge thing as well. Trying to get people that are known and being ambassadors of the series. That's, I think, a big thing. If you were to get a Toronto Maple Leaf player, if you were to get a former hockey player, well-known, tweeting out where they are, posting that they're at this race, helps with recognition. And we saw that last year, and I think that's why I said Tony Spiteri, he knows what you do. Having the member of the Arkells, having Carrie Schmidt, well known in the city of Toronto, having those types of names is good. I mean, we've seen in the past the Trailer Park Boys at the racetrack. That's the type of thing that you want to do, right? You want to get those big names. It's hard to get the biggest of the big, but at the end of the day, it is an entertainment, is what you're selling. Now, the other thing too, I mean, I don't know how many people that are watching the show have been to Cup races, have been to races down south, but if you've ever been there, look at the tailgate experience, look at the amount of vendors, even just as something as simple as having diecast available at the racetrack. If the racetracks are going to allow people to have a spot and sell whatever their heart's desire, having sell auto parts or having merchandise of some sort, Etsy store that's got to do with racing. Fast Eddie, you see them at the racetrack quite often. NTN Bearings has had hospitality booths. And making sure that people go to them. Quick Wick is always there. It's all about building this experience, and I think we're definitely on that right path. And now by having drivers that are familiar, that have a good social media presence, and I think there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. Drivers, and this is not just on the teams and the drivers themselves, this is on NASCAR.ca as well. Now, again, I will say it time and time again, I don't believe our social media team is at fault for that. I think the social media team is amazing. I think they're very limited. And unfortunately, it put them in a lot of bad positions where people would be blasting them for this and that and this and that. And I knew the background that they couldn't do anything about it. Well, now having a central team here in Canada is going to help. I think having a good relationship with somebody like a G-Force TV would only benefit them. If I'm NASCAR, obviously I'm looking for revenue from a broadcast. That's the reality. G-Force, I don't know if you're going to get that. But what I would love to see is expansion. We've seen it before where practice or qualifying, I think it's just qualifying last year, but I'd love to see practice or qualifying either live streamed. It doesn't have to have commentary. You just have your timing and scoring. Even as something, and I've said it before, I'm more than willing to go to a racetrack and do a audio broadcast of what's happening at the racetrack. That's something that we don't have at all. And that might go a long way. I'm not suggesting that we're going to go back in time and only focus on having a radio presence here, but let's say somebody does not have access to a TV, first off. Somebody doesn't have access to cable or doesn't have the means or the funds to pay for the subscription services that they need to be able to watch these events. Well, why not having something on an audio platform? It's obviously something that's going to need to be discussed because there's a lot of permissions that have to happen. broadcast rights have to be allowed. Obviously, I don't know how that would work against like TSN with them having broadcast rights for NASCAR, but something as small as that, where it's like, hey, you go to NASCAR.ca, there will be an audio link. You might not get the race broadcast with Clinton and Adam, but I think there'd be a way that they could plug in essentially the audio version, just the audio of the live stream. Just it gives another way for fans to get the product. And then if they find that they like it and that they can't be without it, then sure, have the opportunities to have audio, video. As I mentioned before, I'd love to be able to do pre-race and post-race on GeForce TV. I think that's something else. Doing a lot of this stuff. Problem is just there's a cost aspect to it. When you have all these ideas out there, it's exciting because there's a lot that we can do. I think that what's really good is the people in this series are committed. They know what they're in for. You've got some great people that are going to commit and build on this series, and that's, I know, JC Paye being one of them, Joel Robinson from TSN constantly working. Obviously, you've got the new team at NASCAR. There's going to be a new series director, so whether he or she comes in and makes some changes on the technical side, on the broadcast side, I think there's a lot that the series can really do. I mean, something as simple as having fan ambassadors like myself, and I'm not advocating to get a position or anything like that, but you need people that are going to push your product. I think one of the downsides is that there isn't a lot of well-known people within this series. I think what's interesting is I went on this what's called the Wayback Machine, and what you can do is actually go back and find a website from years ago. And interesting enough, when it was the NASCAR Canadian Tire Series, there was a way that you could go on the main site and you would see the series director and their contact information. I think it's tech director, their information, social media, their information. I want to see that. I want to have that type of information available because that's how you build your audience. That's how you build and help inquiries. I mean, I had people asking last year how they get involved and how they do this, and I didn't know because I couldn't give any information to them for how they find this and how they find that. But like I said, I think what we've seen before is Tony knows what he's going to do. Jim says, I think with the new leadership, it will help getting things done locally. It has to help where, as in the past, I'm sure the answer from down south was just no. Yes. I can't say that the answer was no, but the reality is you had to go through too many channels. Now you're going to have Chad Siegler. You're going to have that team, Josh Hamilton at NASCAR International, that you don't need to go and get things done. And it's one of the biggest problems I had with how things were run, which is we had to go. The biggest problem I think last year was that the timing and scoring was run through the US channel, essentially, is that it had to come from us to them, and then the link between us and them never worked. You can't have that. Not in 2022 when timing and scoring is like the most important thing. If they want to do things correctly, honestly, just use Race Monitor. Really. Have it so that it shows up. You can have your nice little logos and everything like that. If it were me, it's all about branding too. So I want to see my timing and scoring show up with the logos or the numbers of the driver with their actual number fonts. I think that makes it look professional, just like the Cup Series down south. You're going to have the font, just like you'd see on the race car, that shows up on your timing and scoring. You have status as to where the drivers are. I think this all goes back to the results, and I don't believe in using racing reference. I think that's a way to continue to use for your historical purposes. Absolutely, great way of tracking that. But when you're actually presenting the results, a PDF with basic text is not the way to go. You want to have something that pops, that is interesting, that is showcasing. Obviously, there's a whole different way we can do things. There's a lot that would have to go into it. I think that we are damn lucky to have Matthew Manor, Caitlin Patrick that run that social media. Like some of the photos, like this background photo, man, holy moly, this is a Matthew Manor photo, and it's absolutely beautiful. I absolutely love this picture with the championship trophy. I think it looks so good. And like I said, I think Caitlin has done a phenomenal job in building the series, and it's those type of materials that gets me excited to promote it. The broadcast itself, like I said, we only have those hour-long tape delays. I don't think we're going to get past that. I think that's what it's going to stay at for the next couple years for sure. Whether we get an actual live event, that's going to be tough. I know they did it for GP3R. They did it for Montreal. I don't think you're going to get mainstream cable anymore. It's just not going to happen. That's why they go streaming. Streaming is the way of the future. I know a lot of people maybe don't believe that, but we're not going to see this go on to Netflix. It's not going to go on to Amazon, Apple TV. None of that stuff is going to happen. I think right now your basis that you're looking at is continue to be on TSN, .ca streaming. If they're able to get onto, say, a TSN 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that would be huge. There used to be regional channels for TSN, and I don't think they do those regionals anymore. I think it's just literally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I could see something like Auschweekend is exclusive on GeForce. That I think would stay. I think you still have those opportunities. I would like to see both GeForce TV for the race and TSN. I think that's the way to do it for an event like that. I think if you're going to stream an event, you're looking obviously at your big events like the Indy. GP3R is going to more than likely stay live on Motorsport TV. It was last year. RDS, I think, has had it in the past. TSN has had it in the past when we were in Montreal. They used to do it all the time. So I think you're going to see a lot potential there. There's still a lot of potential. It is one of those things that if you want to get to a point where people do treat this as their Cup Series for Canada, it's going to need to be on a bigger platform. That is a lot of investment, a lot of time, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. Not that people already don't do that here. There is we see the team from TSN, especially Fuel Media Lab. Joel Robinson and his team are amazing. Absolutely amazing with what they do. And I think that we don't get to see enough. We see a little bit of what they do. We don't get to see a full depth impression of how much work goes into those broadcasts and how good of things that they do, really. I think we should be getting our year in review on TSN. It should be coming pretty soon. I think it is typically December. And we can really use that to reflect, but we really are looking towards that 2023 season. And now, of course, with having... here we go. Jim Haynes says, TV is tough here in the U.S. too. A lot of networks have changed or gone away, and things are now on a lesser channel of streaming, which is a ratings killer, but reality. The reality is, Jim, is that there's no such thing as a cable TV anymore. People don't want commercials. They don't want to wait week in and week out for new episodes. That's the reality. Netflix, you can blame. It really essentially started with Netflix. It was a streaming and everything available at one time so that you can binge watch. That's what people want. And I'm not going to lie, that's what I want too. But if I'm looking at it from a sports perspective, having it on a channel that people have to subscribe to isn't going to get things going, right? People say, well, I want it to be on basic cable. It's never going to be on basic cable because you're going to have to ask them that CTV put it on instead of a football game, for example. instead of whatever sport event that they're putting on, whatever news event that they're putting on. And the reality is, in Canada, this is not going to be big enough to warrant that. If the ratings were a couple mil, absolutely. But we're not going to get to that point, right? It's a really tough sell in 2023 to say, I want this precious airtime. If we don't have a $100 million contract from a network and tons of funding from companies, that's just not going to happen right now. I think the spot that we're at right now is probably the best. I think having an additional online presence, I think having the stream end as soon as the race is over with no other post-race interviews, just either the first place finisher and then maybe the second and third. I think that's a bit of a downfall for it. But again, the resources might not be enough. I think that the investment it comes only with audience participation growth. That's why it's so important to have yourself and those who are fans of the NASCAR Pinty Series to continue the conversation all season long. The NASCAR Pinty Series community Facebook group, of course, just search NASCAR Pinty Series community on Facebook. We are there. We are 6.2K strong. We're trying to get to 10,000 by next year. Might not get to 10,000 by the start of next year right now, but we're continuing to try and get as many new people interested as possible. Of course, here on GeForce TV, make sure you subscribe, turn on the bell for all notifications anytime that we go live. You have a great opportunity of getting some fantastic racing action, including Ohsweken Speedway weekly Friday nights here on GeForce TV. Of course, APC Series on the weekends. Also some events from Merrittville Speedway. Most of the time those are tape delayed. Race Rivals Race Chat on Wednesday nights with Clinton and Adam. And of course the Pinty's on Tuesday nights. Why do I keep saying Wednesday? The Tuesday nights. And the NASCAR Pinty Series Power Hour on Mondays at 7. Make sure what you do, if you can, please, it really does help, is get yourselves a thumbs up, please, for the folks on YouTube, and give us some thumbs up if you're on Facebook as well. That helps us continue to grow week in and week out. We'll be here for the off season. Continue to do whatever we can to try and bring up as much attention heading into 2023. Nothing else that I like more than talking about racing in Canada. Of course, we need this support. We need to continue this fight because we want our racing to be around for years to come. On behalf of everybody here at GeForce TV, I want to thank you for tuning in once again. Jim Haynes, Gary Calling for hanging out, Graydon Bunn, Mark Antoine Cameron, a bunch of others that tuned in to talk. Appreciate it. But we need those thumbs up. We need some subscriptions. Of course, while you're at it, go out and check out the Stickers and Scuffs podcast. We've got a brand new episode coming to this Wednesday with Canadian modified driver out of Brighton Speedway, Corey Halbert, who's going to make his first appearance on the show. Our last episode featured the Thrillbilly Lane Zardo, and previous to that was OSS champ for 2022, veteran Kevin Trevelyan. We're definitely excited to have more news coming to the NASCAR Pinty Series. This week was great. Hopefully we get some more. Let's see you guys all next week here on GeForce TV for the NASCAR